I'm going to give you a tutorial today on how to make pierogies, or how I make pierogies. When I make pierogies, if I don't use rapid rising yeast, I do the recipe just the way it is in the Lowry cookbook. When I use rapid rise yeast, you do it a little bit differently. I do prefer rapid rise yeast because everything's ready in about an hour to start making pierogies. The difference is you start out with half of your flour, your yeast, and your sugar in the mixing bowl, mix it together, and then put in your warm liquids. This recipe calls for a cup of warm milk and a half a cup of warm water. You do not scald the milk when making pierogies because you want the dough to be sticky. You want it to stay closed and keep that little meat filling in there. You scald the milk in most other yeast dough recipes because you want to kill the enzyme in the milk that makes the dough sticky so that you can work with it to shape your dinner rolls and all. So I've got 3 cups of flour in my mixing bowl, and I'm going to add my 3 tablespoons of sugar and let the yeast and sugar and flour get well mixed. And then I will add my warm liquids and let that mix for a little bit so that the yeast will get dissolved and be able to start activating shortly. Okay, so here's my cup of warm milk. Whoops, I already did something wrong. I forgot to mix it before I put my wet ingredients. I've never done this before on camera. I'm actually playing with the remote control and going to see how that works. And I've had my 1.5 sticks of butter, and you always use real butter, never margarine. I've had my butter sitting out for a couple hours now, so it should be good and soft, and it will mix in real well. And here is what my dough looks like at this point with just the 3 cups of flour, the package of sugar, the package of yeast, the 3 tablespoons of sugar, and the warm liquids, the cup of milk and the half a cup of warm water. Now I'm ready to add my ½ teaspoon of salt and my eggs, and the recipe calls for 2 whole eggs and 1 yolk. And I don't know if you all have a egg separator, but I like to use that because for my 3rd yolk only, I'm going to put that in my little egg separator. Oops. And I want just the white to go in the bowl, and I don't like that little white membrane to go in with my egg whites or my egg wash that I'm going to use. It just kind of gets in the way when you're trying to brush the egg on. I don't like to have that white membrane in there, so I'll separate that out. So what I've got in my bowl that I'm going to set aside is the egg white from the 3rd egg yolk that goes in here, and then an additional egg, and that should be just about enough to do my whole batch of pierogies. Occasionally I might add another egg just to see me through to the end. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside. Let's mix in the salt and the eggs. So that makes a pretty thin mixture. And the only thing left is the stick and a half of real butter, and then the last couple cups of flour. Let's mix that in. And if your butter's nice and soft and at room temperature the way you want it, you end up with no lumps or anything. It's just a nice smooth texture. And now we're going to put in the last couple cups, one at a time, of flour. When I make this recipe, I always put in the 5 cups. Rarely do I use a little bit less, even though the recipe says you might have to, depending on the humidity and all of that. See, it's getting stiffer. We've got one last cup. Now you've got a nice stiff dough. I'm going to beat it one more time once I scrape the edges down. My dough is ready to put aside and let it rise. I'm going to put a piece of foil on the top and just let it sit here on the countertop, and in about an hour, maybe to an hour and a half, depending on how warm it is in the house, it'll be ready to go. I'm ready now to work on my filling. And I use the 12-ounce smoked Oscar Mayer lunch meat when I do this. And the easiest way I have found over the years for slicing the bacon is I put half of my ham down on my cutting board. And I'm going to do half of my bacon at the same time. And the bacon and ham slice really easily if they're really, really, really cold from the refrigerator. It just cuts through so much easier. And since my bacon's a little bit wider than my ham stack, I picked up some of the bacon, laid it on top. Now watch, real slick. My hand's greasy, so it's hard to keep it going. Let me wipe it off here. Now we'll cut it the other way. If you hold it real firmly, make your hand into a C and hold it real firmly, you won't have too much problem with ending up with some long strings. But if you do, it's not a big deal. You'll notice them when you're stirring it, and you can cut them. I even use my utility scissors and cut them while it's in the hot pan cooking. Once I get half of it done and in my pan, I'm going to stir it really good to break apart all the little stacks of ham that you might end up with, and get it mixed up real well before I put the second half and the seasonings in with it. Then the second half of my ham and the second half of my bacon. Try to keep my hands clean so that this electric knife doesn't slip so much. If I see any long pieces in there right now, I might take it out and put it on my cutting board. Like I said, if I'm all done and I'm cooking, and as I'm stirring it every 10 minutes or so, if I notice